Welcome to this flight of the Retail Pilot. I'm your host, Ken Pilot, former CEO and current brand advisor, retail tech investor, and board member. I'm thrilled to share with you the insights from some of retail's leaders and legends, as well as my perspective on retail today. This podcast is sponsored by the following. Predict Spring is a global point-of-sale platform live in 22 countries. The platform includes mobile POS, endless aisle, fulfillment, inventory management, and clienteling, creating a true omni experience for customers and associates. Predict Spring powers Suit Supply, Converse, Lovesac, Decium, Janie and Jack, and Bouclair. Breakfast helps brands like HelloFresh, Perfume.com, and QVC increase revenue across Meta and TikTok by creating hundreds of user-generated content video ads. The Breakfast Creator Network, with over 5,000 strong, produces original content that is authentic to each platform and built to drive performance, all done in as little as 3 weeks. Check out breakfast.io. That's BRKFST.io. Welcome back to the Retail Pilot for this week's KPOV, week ending October 21st. I'm going to talk a little bit about things we should be looking at to modernize the store. Yep, brick and mortar for 2024, if you aren't already thinking about it. First and foremost, one of our sponsors, Predict Spring Modern POS Solution. Love what they do. They help make POS easily accessible for associates and also customers, putting together a true omni platform. Number two, in the area of RFID, which gives you that critical, all-important inventory accuracy, you got to go with Radar. They are rolling out 500 American Eagle stores with a ceiling mount not overwhelm them with all that's happening at corporate. One solution is Zipline. They have a great app. It pulls all those tasks together in one area and allows district managers and regionals to follow up. Or you could also look at Storeforce. They have a similar platform that also includes payroll planning. And finally, if you want to get really specific at the store level, I love what Glass Media is doing. They are providing battery-operated digital signage. Yep, that can be moved anywhere within the store or even at the lease line. Imagine being able to offer up promotions that are store-specific whenever you want to do that. And that's what I think a modern store has got to own in 2024. And now to our previously recorded podcast, welcoming my friend, former colleague, and retail designer, Todd Snyder, to today's flight of the Retail Pilot. Todd, welcome.
Hey, welcome, Ken. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you. I've just got to ask, how does a guy from Ames, Iowa, who grew up playing football, went to Iowa State, had a business background, get into fashion and design?
I get asked that a lot. That was always the question I think my folks always wanted to know when I told them I wanted to get into fashion. Like, what? What are you going to do? And, for me, it was just having the love of clothes and having the passion for it really kind of drove me to get into it.
Growing up, was there a designer, a brand, a look that you gravitated towards?
Yeah, I was in, high school. I remember, really loving Calvin Klein. I really remember loving Ralph Lauren and Armani. And then as I got into college and graduated, that kind of, transitioned more into a real passion for Ralph because I was working in retail at the time and was selling a lot of Polo clothing. And I didn't know you could do this for a living, and meaning being a designer. I read Ralph's book and I'm like, holy crap, that's what I want to be.
Were you working on the selling floor for a department store? Where were you selling clothing?
I was working in a store called Bedowers, and it was a store in Des Moines, Iowa that sold menswear and everything from Oxford suits to Ralph Lauren to Cole Haan, back when Cole Haan was cool, and just fell in love with clothes. And I actually started working in the tailor shop there. I really kind of discovered the passion for like actually making things as well.
First job out of school or after working on the selling floor was what?
I really, I worked probably 2 or 3 retailers in Iowa. I worked at a place called Yonkers, which is no longer around. It was a department store in the Midwest. And then I worked at Bedowers, and I worked at a place called The Buckle. And The
The buckle. I
Buckle,
love the buckle. We love
yeah,
the buckle.
I used to do a lot of hems of jeans, and people at the time were narrowing their bottoms of their jeans, which was quite interesting. But yeah, I worked there, and then my first job was really interning at Ralph Lauren. I knew I wanted to get into the business. I switched majors into fashion at Iowa State, and then ended up moving over to really kind of fast forward and kind of move quickly to graduate from Iowa State, and then
Do
moved
you
and moved to New York.
and were you working in the design area under Jerry Lauren at the time? Where were you working at Ralph?
I mean, I was a peon, I was an intern. I was doing anything from fetching coffee to cleaning the closet. I remember that was my biggest achievement, and just tried to do whatever I could to make a difference there and get noticed. And after graduating from college, I got a kind of a freelance gig there. And then I started my real first real job where I was getting benefits and all that was at J. Crew back in 1993.
So 1983, you're at J. Crew, and what are you doing there?
So that was my first real job out of college. I was really excited about working in menswear, and this is like my first foray. I was really fortunate to get into what they called sportswear at the time, which sportswear, they had durables, which was kind of like your chinos and your roll neck sweaters and whatnot. And then Emily had just created this line called sportswear for men that was a little more dressy, that included suits. It was really kind of meant more to be kind of the competition to like a Brooks Brothers. And so I got to do everything from sweaters to knits to wovens to suiting. And that was really what kind of gave me a taste of everything. I was really fortunate looking back, because in this industry, you kind of get kind of pigeonholed into one department and you become an expert in that department versus kind of doing everything. So that was really fortunate looking back. At the time, I was just happy to have a job, to be honest. But it was really kind of what set me up for the rest of my years in the industry.
And how did the opportunity with Gap come along?
Well, back in 94, 95, I my head merchant at J. Crew had left and became a recruiter at the Gap. And he called me up and said, you want to come here and interview? And that was for me. I'm like, what is it? And he's like, well, it's Old Navy. It's a new concept. I'd never seen a store. I didn't know what it was. I think they just changed the name from Gap Warehouse to Old Navy. And quickly, went to a store out in Long Island and fell in love with the brand and knew it was growing. Didn't know how fast until I got there, and started working there in 94, 95. And I was there about 5 years. And it was, some of the best times of my life, because it was really the first time I ever got to travel internationally. I had pretty much lived in Iowa, didn't get to go anywhere. And then, when I started working at Old Navy, I was like traveling to Asia. I was traveling, Europe. I'd never been to California. I got to California a number of times because Gap is based in San Francisco. But yeah, it was really kind of like the beginning stages of building my kind of career and just understanding and appreciating the world and different fashion styles and culture and food and everything.
You were working closely with Jeff Feifel at the time, and I assume Mickey popped in from now and time to time.
A few times, yeah. Mickey, this was his pet project when he went to the Gap. The Gap was essentially already founded, and Banana Republic obviously acquired. And Old Navy was really, I think, his baby, and he really kind of treated it as his baby. And it, I've never seen anything grow so fast in my life. So I would see Mickey probably at least once a month. He lived in San Francisco. Our design offices were here in New York, and he spent a lot of time. He had quite the fascination for Jeff and for what we were doing at Old Navy.
Then when Mickey finally gets the bug to leave and go run J. Crew, throws me out of there, he asks you to come on board. What was the thought there? I mean, you'd had a great run at Gap at Old Navy, helping to build the brand, and you followed MD to his next venture.
Yeah, back to my roots. Yeah, it's odd. I never thought about it until I started telling people stories about how I started in the industry. But I started off at Ralph and then went to J. Crew and then I went to Old Navy. And actually, I went back to Ralph in 99 to 2000. And then I came back to Old Navy. And then, I was there for 5 years. And then Mickey left and called me up. Mickey and Jeff called me up to run men's. And that for me was it. It was a dream come true because I was kind of wondering why they hadn't done it when they first left. They took them about a year and a half to give me a buzz. But once they did, it was dream come true. I knew this was a great opportunity to make a difference and kind of make a name for myself.
At J. Crew, what would you look back and say was your greatest accomplishment there? Or what were you most proud of doing while you were at J. Crew?
And, it's interesting. I think one of my favorite things about J. Crew is, I was in at the time when I was there, I didn't really fully understand it. I was there about 5 years and I remember Mickey having, he's always had this passion for menswear. I think he understands it intimately and really would always kind of come through the men's department and would be, asking my designers questions, me questions, was always very curious. And we'd always have presentations and he'd always be like, when are we going to do a men's store? And I think when that finally happened, and this was in 2008, we opened up the liquor store. And that to me was probably the most amazing achievement because it was great working there, but to be able to see kind of everything come together. And then things really started to change quickly, and men's all of a sudden became a super important piece of the business. It just wasn't, oh, we have men's. It was truly a meaningful part of the business. It originally, when I was there, it was probably 20%. By the time men's was said and done, I had left before it got even bigger, was probably closer to 35%, which is a big number. I mean, men's grew from 250 million to half a billion. And by the time, I think it was 2014, by the time it started flattening. But men's moment, it was incredible. It was like menswear at 2008 time period was having a huge moment in America. It was all about Red Wing boots. It was all about Alden. And we were the ones kind of at the forefront of bringing all those to popularity.
While you were there, did you have a hand in developing the clothing business, the suit business for J. Crew? I remember fondly the Ludlow suit. I think I still have a few somewhere in my closet.
Yeah, actually, that was all birthed at the liquor store. The liquor store was kind of where a lot of the things kind of happened. And very much because of Mickey. Mickey, I remember him coming to me and saying, okay, like, don't let anybody else touch this room. We would actually had a room in the offices that we would assort to. And so we tried to do is kind of create things that were specific just for the liquor store, but knowing that that was going to be kind of a launch pad for everything in men's. So I remember the suit that we started doing there. We hadn't called it the Ludlow at the time, but it was the Ludlow. It was a slimmer fit and it quickly took off. We had Alden boots or Alden shoes and Alden boots that we started there. We had Red Wing boots. We had Macintosh. So we had a lot of like collaborations that we had all started at that store. That was really kind of the beginning stages of kind of what happened afterwards. And everything fell into place after we opened that store. It really kind of became a beacon for not only J. Crew men's, but I think what happened in menswear in America at that time.
So it's amazing because you can see, at least I can, through your career, how it leads you to Todd Snyder, just in terms of the design elements, the aesthetic. So in 2011, as you just shared with me last week, you took some of the proceeds from your sale of J. Crew stock when it went public, and you decided, you know what, I'm going to do this for myself. And you created or launched the Todd Snyder brand in 2011. What was running through your head when you walked into Mickey's office to let him know that you were leaving to do that?
I look back on it. The time when I was doing it, I was scared to death, of course, Mickey being kind of the force that he is. Going up against him is never something you want to do, especially I was 40 at the time. I remember I turned 40 that year and I always had a dream of being, Ralph Lauren in my career, or at least, being a designer. And I mean, being a Ralph is almost impossible now. I don't think there'll ever be another Ralph in America. But I wanted to be my own brand. And I saw white space happening because it was either, Ralph was kind of, you know, I was kind of aging out of Ralph and I didn't think it was as relevant as I would have liked it. And I was seeing brands like Tom Brown that was very niche, but there's really nobody focusing in on this kind of better menswear. And I thought, it's probably about time I should do something with my career, meaning like going after this or forever hold my peace. And I made the decision when I turned 40, you know what, I'm going to do this. I had saved up a bunch of money. I had some J. Crew stock that I had sold and I had a couple $1,000,000 essentially in my pocket. And I decided to go out on my own. And I remember the first 2 years I was scared to death. And I was like, did I do the right thing? The whole stock market fell apart. Lehman Brothers went out of business. This was 2008, 2009, as everybody I'm sure remembers still. And it was scary. It was really scary, but I was able to survive those 2 years and cobble together some odd jobs here and there, some consulting gigs, and made it through. It was really kind of looking back, I'm glad I did it. But at the time, first 2 years, I was scared to death.
And you were positioning the brand somewhere between a J. Crew and a Ralph Lauren. Where would you say was that white space that you identified?
Well, it was really, I mean, the one thing Ralph was great at was he was kind of that in between true designer. When I say designer, I'm thinking like luxury designers like Louis Vuitton, Dior, Zegna, things like that. Those Cucinelli you can put in there now that are super uber expensive. And that to me is unattainable. That's very much like the 1%, maybe half percent of the population of America. And then it was everybody else. And then it was either feast or famine. It was like either super expensive. I remember Tom Brown's shirts were $500, and I just thought that was ridiculous. And I knew that there was room in between that. And Ralph actually has always kind of lived in that space. He is perceived as designer and certainly is, but most of his stuff that he's selling, whether it's the polo player or the chino, is pretty fairly priced. Polo, although recently I went in the store and I was shocked that it's like $150 now, but it was always reasonably priced. You could get a polo for, at the time, $80. You can get a woven shirt for 120. So I kind of positioned myself a little bit above that just because I knew also I couldn't get that economies of scale yet. So I really positioned myself kind of just a little bit about 20, 30% above Ralph Lauren. And that kind of is where we lived. And that's still where we live today. We're essentially, fairly priced. All of our product is made either in Portugal or Italy. All of our fabrics come from Italy or Japan. I really wanted to come at it with a lens of luxury, but affordable luxury. And we call it casual luxury because we don't take ourselves too seriously. I still have my kind of humble Midwest roots. I want customers to feel like they can be a part of the brand. I don't like walking into stores where the sales staff's is too busy to help you or too snobby to help you. I wanted to create an environment where it's a lot more attainable, but still deliver great product. And I started doing that at J. Crew, and Mickey was certainly the advocate that really pushed. We're not going to go chase the discounters. He really pushed storytelling and fabrics and yarn, using Loro Piana, cashmere, using Italian fabrics. That's what made J. Crew what it was great for. They don't do that anymore, obviously, but it's definitely, something I kind of borrowed, but also knew that there was space in between kind of the Uber Lux and kind of what J. Crew does. And that's where I really kind of have made a home and a pretty good one.
And you've taken on such a broad approach. And by that, I mean everything from clothing, suitings to t shirts to denim. I mean, that's a lot of product. And maybe that goes back to your early days when you were working at J. Crew and you were first introduced to every classification. But I mean, I know how hard it is to take on all those classifications and bring it all together. And you've done an amazing job. I love shopping in your stores. And I think it's kind of ironic that one of my favorite stores is the liquor store that you referenced earlier. That was the most iconic men's store for J. Crew, which now maybe is one of the more iconic stores for Todd Snyder.
Yeah, I mean, that store means a lot to me. When J. Crew vacated it about 3 or 4 years ago, I remember I jumped on it. I ended up meeting the owner. I mean, it's a third generation owner, and she lives in Westchester, and I had to meet her. I knew when we got this first one, and this actually came through Andy Spade. The very first one we worked with Andy Spade on, who's a genius in the industry, that I think I owe a lot to, because he definitely introduced the liquor store to us at J. Crew. But I also knew that was really hard to get because she, she's a private owner. She owns like two or three buildings. This is not her, she doesn't have somebody managing it. It's her managing it. So I knew I needed to kind of break out my Midwest charm and go meet her in person. I remember driving up to Westchester and meeting her for breakfast and showing her everything I was doing. I only had one store at the time at Madison and 26. And I thought, I better show who I am. She didn't quite remember me from J. Crew, which was totally fine. But I really just sold her on the dream and kind of what I believed in, and having kind of continuing kind of what we started at J. Crew. And one of my favorite things was, I don't know if I've told you this, but we had an opening party after we got it. And we invited Mickey to come, and we invited Jenna Lyons to come, and they both came at different times. And they both said to me the same thing: I'm so glad you have it. Like, this just warms my heart that you have this thing. Cause it was special to all of us. It wasn't just me. It was the entire, like, we made a difference in J. Crew men's wear in America. And it was just nice to be able to hear that from, two people I highly respect. And it made me feel great that they felt the same way that I felt about it. So, for me, that's always been kind of like nice thing to have as a business is that store. And the store does incredibly well still. We gave it a big upgrade. We redid the fixtures, redid the floors. It's a jewel box beyond.
Stores are really important to you, not only having them, but also the way they look, they feel, the design. You've always been very close to the store design, which leads me to wonder when Todd Snyder Home gets launched. But you and I actually had some fun experiences doing some of the earlier stores when I was working at ABC Home. I remember calling you somewhere in France saying, Todd, I found a pommel horse. Do you like it? And I think I was sending you pictures from France. You go, yes, get that. Pick up those lockers. But you
Yeah.
always were very hands on. And as we discussed the other day, you're very hands on with really every element of the Todd Snyder brand. Tell me more about your involvement really across the different disciplines of the business.
Yeah, I think it's really important, especially in the beginning stages, to I have a pretty strong vision when it comes to interiors, and I stores are really important. It's probably the easiest way, as people say, well, what's your brand about? When you're talking one on one, it's really hard to come up with the words that nail it, you know. But if you're in a store, you don't have to say anything. People come in and like, oh, I get it. They see the furniture. They smell the candles we're burning. They see kind of what you're putting out there as far as other product. They get welcomed by the staff. You see all your senses are firing. So you really get to understand a brand quickly when you go into a store. And I really covet that. And that really came from, me working at Ralph Lauren. And for the longest time, I mean, I was a huge Ralph head. I still am. I would There was nobody better at merchandising a store than him. I think that was his claim to fame. I think, certainly he's done amazing things, not just stores, but his store, he changed the game for everybody in America. The way he would concept stores, he thought about it as almost if you were making a movie. And that really came through in everything from the store experience to the product to everything that he touched. And so I always coveted that piece. And I still remember, yes, I think you were in Belgium actually, and you always find the coolest furniture. And I'd be like, yeah, get those lockers, get that. And still miss those days because those are still some of my favorites, because it is a bit of a puzzle as you're building your brand. You're trying to think about what's important, but also what your customer is going to respond to. You want to surprise and delight. Shopping to me is a discovery, and people want to discover things that they love, whether it's food, whether it's music. When you get turned on to a new book or a new restaurant, you covet that. And it's the same way in apparel.
You mentioned music. If I were to walk into a Todd Snyder store now, what would you want me to hear? What would be the right music to create the right vibe for that moment that I walk into your store?
Well, hopefully it's a good playlist. It's not necessarily just about one artist, and I would say that's kind of what our stores are like. I mean, our staff is incredible. We have some of the coolest people. Some people are into music and some people are DJs and some people are, into art. We try to build a staff that has a real affinity for things that are relevant and cool. Whether it's a great restaurant to go eat at or whether it's a great exhibit to go check out. I really try to make every store almost feel like a concierge for wherever they are. Because it's important to me when you come in, people think you're even that much cooler if you're telling them, oh, by the way, if you like this jacket, where are you guys going to dinner? Oh, hold on, I'll get you set up. Why don't you go to this place? It's new. And I've done that a few times. Actually, the liquor store, a couple came in and I happened to be there and they came in for their anniversary. And I asked them, I said, hey, where are you guys going to dinner? And they told me where they're going. I said, you know what? Let me do one better if you're into it. I said, let me go talk to the chef. And I walked them across the street to One White Street, which is Michelin star restaurant. It's amazing down in Tribeca on West Broadway. Walked up, the chef's there. I said, chef, can you help out my customers? They're here for their anniversary. They'd love to have their anniversary dinner here. Sure enough, he fits them in. It's like impossible to get in there and they have the time of their life. And for me, that's completes the journey. I mean, they're great customers, but I also want to connect them with things that I think are relevant that I actually think they would appreciate. And that's really, to me, music in general, there's so many different vibes I like in music. I like everything from classic, The Nationals, probably one of my favorite bands, to hip hop, to even jazz, So we have a great playlist that kind of plays a little bit of all those things. And then, of course, always some great rock and roll and some of the classics. So Tom
It's
Petty's
all
usually my go-to.
it's all about the mix, and I think that's one of the things that you do incredibly well, the way you mix the product, not only within your own categories, but how you take third-party brands and then adding on to that, the collaborations that you do. How do you determine who to collaborate with? What are you looking for your next collaboration?
Well, I think for collaborations, I'm always looking for authenticity, meaning brands that have really been original in their space, i.e., Champion. I started working with Champion about 9, 10 years ago now. And nobody had really kind of told their story, and they've been around for like 100 years. And I just like the idea of kind of reframing them up and kind of digging things out of the archive. I got the whole idea of doing collaborations actually from my trips to Japan. And there's a really cool publication that used to come out called Free and Easy, which was a cool Japanese magazine that would always talk and educate all of us about what's cool about America, which is kind of telling, meaning we're in Japan and here's this magazine telling people what's cool in America. They were pretty spot on. Everything from Champion to Alden to Red Wing. That actually became my roadmap for when I did my own thing. And I really kind of followed the Japanese love for Americana. And I knew that that could be a really easy way for myself to build brand awareness because most people at the time didn't know who Todd Snyder was, but I knew they probably knew what Champion was or they knew what Red Wing was. So kind of the same thought was as I think about collaborating with a brand, I want to make sure that they were the first. And Champion was the first that, really invented the sweatshirt. It had been around before Adidas, before Nike, before Russell. And I really wanted a chance to go through their archives. And then I kind of fell in love with that whole process to me, being able to meet their creative directors, being able to dig through the archives and unearth things that had kind of been forgotten is exciting. And I did that a number of times. I did that with Timex. And coincidentally, I didn't plan this, but pretty much every brand I've worked with has been around for over 100 years. That was never a prerequisite. I was just always trying to find brands that had been original and authentic. And, the list is probably 10 or 20 by now, but Timex and Champion and Red Wing and Alden, Converse. The list goes on and on. But I really enjoy doing it because it kind of fills this creative void sometimes that I have, and it teaches me new craft and new kind of process to really kind of think differently.
Let's take a quick break with a word from our sponsors. Bluecore's software solution turns anonymous online shoppers into known customers and repeat customers. Bluecore enables retailers to personalize and optimize their email, SMS, and site marketing campaigns by delivering targeted and relevant messages based on where every customer is in their journey. Bluecore replaces annoying high-volume messaging with high-value messaging. Customers include Alo Yoga, Neiman Marcus, and Gap. We're back. 2015 rolls around, and American Eagle comes along, offers you $11 million, and buys the company. Why did you sell?
Well, at the time, I was self-funding the whole business. I had some angel investors, and I would meet with banks probably every quarter. It was exhausting, starting your own business. We were probably at $20 million at the time. And it's really, really hard to scale beyond a certain level because I only have so much credit. And it's kind of like right place, right time. And I just really fell in love with the idea of growing this business, and I didn't have the means to do it. And Roger Markfield and Jay came to me. They went into my store, and Jay is Jay Schottenstein, the CEO of American Eagle, but also just a great entrepreneur that owns a lot of businesses. Came into my store. We had a pop-up down on Elizabeth Street. We called it City Gym. It was built on kind of the whole Champion collaboration. And they came in and apparently loved the store, and I wasn't there. And all of a sudden I was hearing, Jay Schottenstein wants to meet you. And then about 2 years later, we inked a deal and really kind of gave me the ability to scale to what I am today.
So, Todd, in 2011, American Eagle identifies you as a takeover target, and you decide to sell the business for $11 million. What happened? And tell us the good and the bad, if there is any, about being part of a major corporation.
Well, first of all, running your own business is really, really challenging. I mean, I was self-funding the whole thing and had, everything leveraged that I owned. I had friends involved. I had, Mike Tucci, as you know, was my angel investor. And there's only so big that you can get on your own. And I realized quickly, we got to $20 million and we weren't going to get much bigger than that with my current funding, just because I didn't have enough credit to do more business. So it all happened. It was probably the best times of my life, just because I remember I was so strapped and I was thinking about leaving the business altogether. I was actually, had good job offers from Nike to run product for them. And I love Nike and thought, at least if I can get my investors paid back, I'll just go do that. And I was really close to actually just saying to heck with the whole thing, because I was getting to a point where I was in all the best stores. I was at Bergdorf's, I was at Barney's, I was at Neiman's, and I just couldn't see the pathway of continuing to do that and to grow at the same time. And that was really, these guys came along at the right place, the right time. I had built a store, a pop up down on Elizabeth Street that we called the City Gym. And it was built on my whole Champion collaboration that I did. And Jay Schottenstein, the CEO of American Eagle, and Roger Markfield, who was kind of the president, kind of creative guy of American Eagle, came in and loved what I was doing. And Roger, was a big fan of mine. He tried to recruit me forever from Old Navy and J. Crew. They said, what if we buy you? And at first it was a little worrisome, but then I was like, wait, this could be really great for the brand and for me in general. Because I was not paying myself hardly anything. I was self funding everything, and I didn't see the runway. So they kind of gave me an opportunity to scale my business. And, it's been amazing. It's been a dream come true. I wouldn't be here without them, but there's always opportunity, I think, with them to show that I can build something and that I can they believe in what I do and they fund it, which is really exciting. We're profitable now, but we weren't profitable in the first 7 or so years. So it really took someone to believe in your vision and to give you the keys, which they did.
They're supporting you with opening new stores. You have 15 stores now. I'm sure they're supporting you with technology that you need, probably everything that you need on the financial side to really scale the business. And I believe today your business is over 100 million in sales. Is that fair to say? And is that okay to say on the show?
Definitely, we're over 100 million, and you can say that. I've said that before in some other articles, so you're covered.
Thank God. Can't do another cut, edit, take. And when you think about the business, Todd, you've where you are today, you've got strong direct to consumer. You still have some wholesale?
No, we don't wholesale at all. When I first started out off, we were pretty much 100% wholesale, and then the second year we added our e-com, and then, now fast forward 10, 11, 12 years now, we're pretty much 100% direct to consumer.
And that's all in the US. Is there an international piece of the business at this point?
We ship internationally, but it's only, it's small. It's maybe like a million or two. It's nothing, with duties and shipping, it's just crazy expensive.
So if we were to look at the next 3 to 5 years, would the business continue to be direct to consumer only, US only, and no wholesale? Or do you see other paths for growth?
I think, all paths are valid. I think wholesale is important. At the time when I was doing it, and Nordstrom and Mr. Porter were our last retailers that we were selling to, it just became too burdensome to service them. It was for fall, you actually have to ship goods in June, latest July, which is just insane from a direct to consumer business. You typically don't have fall goods until August, September, and then you try to sell through them by, end of year, meaning like January. Whereas the wholesale calendar is a lot different. It starts in June and then they start marking down in November, which is not great for our business. So we were constantly fighting with them on that. Plus, we were constantly fighting for search engine, SEO, trying to get our name at the top of that. So if you didn't know how to spell Todd Snyder and you typed it in, and you'd see Mr. Porter first and Nordstrom second and whoever else we were selling to. And it was just really challenging to kind of compete with them. And then if they ever go on markdown, you're kind of beholden to that. So it was very disruptive to a direct consumer business. So I just decided, you know what, we can kind of stand on our own 2 feet. And we did. And at the time, it made a lot of sense. But I do think that I never say never. And, if we get the right terms and conditions with them, we would consider it. But today we're able to, I think with today's technology and just everything that's happening, and, the ability to open stores, you can really be your own storyteller. You can be your own blowhorn. It used to be back in the day that you'd build a brand. Hopefully, you get a department store to pick it up. They would help amplify it. You might do an ad in a magazine and that would help amplify it. You might do a billboard and that would help amplify it. But that's all changed. Like, it's actually, you do everything through your phone today. So we've really mastered on how to talk directly to our customer, but also how to acquire new customers, mainly through your phone, whether it's social, Instagram, whatever the latest and greatest is. We've learned how to deal directly with them and acquire them through that device. It's no longer as important as it used to be in the best department store. Ideally, in a perfect world, it would be great, but the way we're built today, it's just really not the case.
Let's take a quick break with a word from our sponsors. Retech is the leading innovation hub for everything retail technology. Based in the heart of Startup Nation, we have access to a growing network of over 500 tech companies building cutting-edge solutions for the future of retail. Join me and the team at the annual event Retech Disrupt, April 15th to the 17th in Tel Aviv, Israel. See you there and see retail innovation in action. What about brand extension or product extension? Women's, you probably get asked about that quite a bit. Is there a women's line in the future for Todd Snyder, or are you going to stay in the men's lane?
I'm really trying to stay in the men's lane. I mean, you mentioned it before. We do have a broad category. Like we carry everything from a sweatshirt to a tuxedo. We carry everything, in an age where people were trying to be item focused and very much like item killers, as they used to call them, where you would focus on an area, whether it was underwear or socks or whatever. It's interesting now to see those players because they've all shifted into other categories. I've always felt our biggest strength is the assortment and trying to dress the guy head to toe and really giving a guy a reason to only shop with us. That's really kind of what my goal is. Big reason why we carry third party and other brands is to really complete that outfit. And we call it our three C's. We kind of have our collection, and then we call it collaboration, and then we also call it curation. And it's how we build our collection that is super important. That's where we make most of our money. And then doing collaborations really helps us amplify what we're doing. And then curation is really working with third party brands and doing things that are unique to us. So the customer really loves and engages even more because they may recognize that we carry tier one distribution in Nike or that we have tier one in New Balance. And it really makes the shopping experience unique because the guy can come to us and he doesn't have to go wait in line at some store to get a sneaker. We kind of have it for them. And the goal is really kind of just to be there and be the one stop shop for the guy.
You mentioned marketing and reaching new customers. What's working for you in the marketing space? How are you actually reaching new customers? And at the same time, how are you keeping the existing ones? Marketing's become a lot tougher since the changes to iOS have been in place. What's working for Todd Snyder?
Well, we work in probably 8 or 10 different channels, as we call them channels. Everybody kind of in the direct to consumer calls them channels. We really find a lot just from influencers. So we work with a lot of influencers that will help amplify our message. The second one is really working with affiliates, and affiliates are, brands like GQ or Esquire that are, sending out emails that talk about Todd Snyder has the best new t-shirt or what have you. And that really helps us acquire new customers. And then through social, aside from the influencer piece, us putting ads out there on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, all of those. Pinterest is another one that's actually been quite good for us. All of those help kind of get our brand out there as people spend more time on their phones. You serve them up ads versus the way it used to be was you might do a commercial, you might do a magazine ad. All of those aren't as productive anymore. It's still more productive to really do, direct consumer ads that people convert on.
With that, we'll pivot to technology. I know you have a fondness for technology, as I do, and we often chew the fat around it. What technology is helping you scale your business? Is there one area that you're thinking about now that you're looking at that can really help you move Todd Snyder forward?
Geez, the list is vast. The hardest thing with technology is implementation. I mean, there's tons of technology out there. It's just, using the ones that make sense for your business. I mean, I've been running on Shopify my whole existence of Todd Snyder. Our POS is now on Shopify. So I'm always looking for things that plug into that really easily because that's not going to change for us in any time in the near future. So I'm always looking for things, whether customer is the biggest piece that we need to solve. And so we're looking at a CRM tools that can help us get better managing our customer. As you can imagine, we acquire about, I don't know, something like 5,000 customers a month. And managing those customers is really hard. It's much easier when they walk into your store. You can see them, you see what they're wearing, you might remember what they bought. But when you're just seeing like 5,000 new customers come in a month, it's really hard to segment them into, oh, that guy only, he likes their suits and he kind of is a dressy kind of guy. Oh, that guy is much more sneakerhead and he kind of likes more of a casual style. You kind of have to put together some theories and test and learn from that. And that's really hard to do. And so we're currently implementing a CRM tool that will help us. But then the other thing that I'm really excited by, which is the big buzzword right now, is AI. And we're trying to use AI. There's some platforms out there that we're working with this one called XGen AI that I really like. We haven't implemented it yet, but it plugs into Shopify really well, and it's very good at predicting what a brand new consumer is going to want from you, based on their site views and whatnot. It informs your data to kind of react a certain way online to offer things up that might be top of mind. And it gets smarter and smarter, obviously, the more you shop. So those are the kinds of things that I'm really excited by, because I always tell the teams it is kind of like working at a store and trying to figure out when your customer comes in, kind of anticipating what it is that they're wanting, or offering things that they may not thought they were looking for that they may be interested in, because you can't always predict, those things. So it is hard, but trying to do that digitally is the biggest challenge. But there are tools out there now that are making it easier to kind of estimate what customers are wanting, and really making them happy, and making sure that they're getting everything that they want from your brand.
I'm looking forward to you using one platform, and you will not be surprised what I say because you're such a rock star. But I know that if you were to use shoppable video or shoppable live stream, and you were to present your product in store live to all your customers online, you'd probably take down your website. But I'll leave that to you, Todd. That's just how I feel. We could do a rev share deal on that even. I'll get the guys Firework to do a rev share on that because you'd kill it. Everybody wants to see what you're picking, what you're loving, and I love your stores. And one other thing before we jump into rapid fire, I just got to say you're really quite unique in that I don't know many creative guys who are also really and truly the CEO. I mean, Ralph was the CEO, but he had this guy Roger Farah there to help,
Yeah.
who was amazing and really ran the company operationally and helped out in many other areas. But Todd, you really do oversee your entire organization in addition to the creative piece of the business. And I just got to say, hats off to you. You've done an amazing job. And you are one of my favorite designers, Todd.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. I was always bummed that we never worked together at the Gap. When you guys were kind of overhauling that and kind of reinventing it, I was always hoping I was going to get picked, but Jeff was always very shy about offering up his people.
Yeah, Jeff Feifel wasn't sharing. I know he wasn't going to share with me. And Todd, just to share my enthusiasm with everyone who's listening today who may not have shopped, and maybe to save you on the CAC line, Todd is offering a 20% off promo that's good for 1 week from the day we drop this podcast. The promo code is Pilot20. So use that code and fix your look. All right, Todd, you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right. Besides yourself, favorite menswear designer,
Armani.
favorite piece of clothing that you own,
I would say my vintage Levi's 501s.
which collaboration would you most like to do?
Nike.
Who most influenced your career?
That's a toss up. I would say Mickey and Ralph, but I work longer for Mickey, so I have to go with Mickey.
Good answer. Favorite streamed show?
Is The Housewives, is that a stream show? I don't think it is. I'm kind of obsessed now with New York Housewives now that Jenna's on there.
We'll call it streamed for now. You may want to come back and answer that one again. Um, who would you most like to meet?
The person, I would say President Obama.
Final question. Company you'd most like to run other than Todd Snyder?
Wow. I don't think I would want to run a company, to be honest with you. I'll tell you why, but I don't think I'd want to run a company. I enjoy what I'm doing for me, but I don't think I could do it for not me.
And with that, we'll land this flight of the retail pilot, Todd Snyder. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This is awesome.
This is your host, Ken Pilot, landing the plane for this episode of the Retail Pilot, Leaders and Legends. Hope you enjoyed the flight. If so, please follow us on your favorite podcast app.